Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is out as of today on Nintendo Switch 2, and this is one of the big Switch 2 exclusive holiday season games. It's a big deal for Nintendo fans, especially if you're new into the Switch 2 ecosystem, and I have a lot to say about this game. It's honestly pretty crazy to me what this game pulls off in some respects, and in others, I definitely have some critiques and complaints. So I do want to actually break everything down with you all and hopefully come to a conclusion in this video of who this game is for. And I'm going to say right out of the gate before we go through each kind of section, if you've played a Hyrule Warriors game in the past and you're not a huge Zelda lore fan in general, this is still very much a Hyrule Warriors game through and through, and nothing has really changed dramatically from the core formula, though a lot of things have tightened up. But I want to share my opinions on the gameplay loop, the actual mechanics of the gameplay, the overall story progression, with no spoilers, mind you, how it runs and performs on the Switch 2, which is one of the biggest upgrades in the series so far, and hopefully by the end of this video, you can have a better decision on whether or not this is a game you want to pick up at a full $70 US retail price in this Switch 2 holiday season. So we'll unpack all of these details. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off talking about the combat at its core, because this is still Hyrule Warriors as mentioned. If you played a prior Hyrule Warriors game, you are going to go into this really knowing what to expect from a everything is chaos on screen standpoint. It is very much a hack and slash game at the end of the day. You are going to constantly be button mashing, and while you have your basic attack with Y, you are going to be stringing together some heavier attacks with X, and there's a nice level up system we'll get to in a moment where you're going to start to get more chain combo options and things, but Y and X are your primary buttons that you're going to be spamming like crazy to get a lot of different basic attacks off on screen. You can dodge out of the way with the B button, and as somebody who is like deep into the From Software library of games, I am very comfortable with a last minute timing dodge roll, and that works out here with this because very similar to how you can dodge last minute with like a backflip or a side jump in Tears of the Kingdom, if you just hit that dodge button in combat just right before you impact with an oncoming attacks, Flurry Rush is in full effect and works almost identically to how it does in Tears of the Kingdom, which is actually a really cool core mechanic to have at the central part of the combat, at least for me, who gets up close and personal, and I like to dodge out of the way last minute. I definitely take my fair share of damage, but that Flurry Rush is very satisfying when it does pop up when you time things just right. When you hold the R trigger, you get a set of special attacks that you can select from. These do have a cooldown timer, so you won't just want to go absolutely crazy with them, but it is cool because these are also attacks you will use to time oncoming red dangerous attacks from enemies, and if you hit them just right, you're going to do significantly more damage and in some case break their guard entirely. You can then do some follow-up attacks, and if their guard is broken, you can do kind of like a fatal finishing blow. Doesn't always guaranteed kill them, but more or less gets a significant chunk of their health off whenever that happens. The more satisfying aspect of the combat is just how seamless it is to switch between your characters, because at any given time, you can switch between Princess Zelda, Rauru, Minoru, and all the others that join your party with an up or down press on the D-pad. And this is actually where it gets a little bit more strategic in the combat, I will say, because you have normal combat. Well, you have easy, you have normal, you have hard and very hard as far as difficulty settings. So you can play this thing with the skill level that you want. If you're playing on normal, which is just what I dove into for the video's sake, I will say that you don't have to have a ton of strategy here. You can pretty much get through most of the, at least early game challenges, without really thinking twice and really mainly button mashing those X and Y buttons together. You will feel way more satisfied if you take the time to kind of time your special attacks in between characters and switch between characters at the right time, because they all have their own individual cooldown meter, and that's kind of a really satisfying thing to pull off when you chain it together just right. Not to mention you have all these different items you can use straight from Tears of the Kingdom, like the Zonai flame emitter, you get an ice emitter, one of those giant time bomb things. There's all types of different. If you had it in Tears of the Kingdom so far, my mindset is that likely there's some kind of alternate version, or at least the exact same version potentially in this game. Like there's a lot of different items that just straight up return from the world of Tears of the Kingdom, and those are very satisfying to use. And you do have to kind of pay attention with your rations to re-heal yourself in terms of your hearts, and that's something you can quickly get to from your menu by pressing over on the D-pad, I believe, as well as recharge your batteries so you can use the Zonai items after they've run out of charge. You can do all of this on the fly, and when you do pop up that full side menu, combat does stop for you for just a moment, so you kind of get a second to breathe and know what's going on, and then you're right back to it. There is something called Sync Strike, where you press L and you actually synchronize your special move with another character's special move, and it literally is probably one of the most satisfying things when it pops up just at the right time when you need it. You get a very big, impactful, like quick cutscene type of build up to the attack, and then oftentimes a pretty demolishing attack, and or you might summon a construct that you can do significantly more damage with and things like that. So just depending on who you're teaming up with and the character combination, you're going to do different attacks with that Sync Strike, and I found myself really enjoying that when pulling it off. I will say that when it comes to the progression in this game, it is very satisfying because your combat, you're constantly leveling up. As you complete different missions and things, you are going to gain more experience. Your base character will level up, but you will also get materials to level up your weapons, like the Zonite Steel. And one thing that really hooks me into gameplay loops is when you do a challenge, you overcome it, and you feel like your character is becoming more capable slowly, and you can kind of start to go in a direction with the character that you're going to lean into more. I do enjoy the combat level up system so far, and I don't know the depths of where it ends because I'm still, relatively speaking, pretty early game, but I do find myself wanting to go and make sure I upgrade everything as soon as I can. And then this will kind of dovetail us into the general progression of the game before we talk about the story and performance. The progression of the game is very predictable. It's mission based. I mean, essentially, as your hub world opens up, more or less, you have the depths below, the surface, and even some sky missions, which is a pretty cool thing that they included in here. Very reminiscent of like Star Fox style gameplay. But you'll have either side missions or main missions to select on there. Each main mission so far for me has been between, 20, 25, maybe as long as 30 minutes to get through. You're going to get it set up with a nice opening story cutscene. You're going to get an ending with a further story cutscene kind of progressing you through to the next story beat as a whole. And you also have like your character upgrade sprinkled along here where you can unlock additional attacks, additional hearts, and all of that stuff by providing items on each character. When you see their icon there as an option to upgrade, if you have the required materials, you're going to be able to upgrade them, and that's something you will definitely want to just do if you have the stuff, no questions asked. But this is one element that I can see people just feeling like this ultimately gets repetitive, because while the missions and combat, if you like these style of chaotic warrior style games, feel very enjoyable to complete, it also becomes very quickly like loosely what to expect as you go into the next mission, and will they do enough long term by the end of this game to make you feel like a lot of things you didn't see coming were packed in here. I think it is one of those things where you can kind of predict how your time's going to be spent in this game entirely right after you complete a few missions towards the start of the game. But the story, and this is where I think there is a big fork in the road of people who will really enjoy this for what it is and dive deep into the lore and really enjoy things because you are a hardcore Zelda fan, and the crowd that probably, if you don't care about story as much, you're just not going to be as interested in this if you don't like Hyrule Warriors or Dynasty Warriors, warrior style games in general anyway. And that has to do with the fact that this is very much, no story spoilers, of course, the other side of what happened in the events of Tears of the Kingdom from Zelda's perspective. And it is very early on for me, adding so much depth and context and backstory to what is happening from Zelda's point of view that I personally cannot wait to see not only some big story beats that I know are going to happen because you played through Tears of the Kingdom, which I would definitely assume most people who pick this up are going to play through Tears of the Kingdom. If you didn't, you'll have some surprises, but it makes more sense to play through Tears of the Kingdom first, in my opinion. Well, we get like truly and right out of the gate the other side of what happened when Link and Zelda separated Tears of the Kingdom. And that's not a spoiler, that's literally where the game starts. But I will just tell you, as you progress, it's really impressive, the level of detail, the graphical quality, the voice acting, which is I'm very grateful for after spending so many hours right now in Pokemon Legends ZA. I will just say that voice acting is here, it's excellent, and it's very welcome. It does feel like at times you are watching a mini Zelda movie and you just get it in small doses, and it's top-notch story quality so far, in my opinion. All of the Ganondorf scenes and just the music that's playing behind it, like, it has such a special feeling. And if you are a lifelong Zelda fan, like, there's already been multiple moments that have given me goosebumps watching the story in this game. So story's a big high point, and it's kind of what I knew looking into this, which, by the way, this is a canonized story now officially. There's no question about if it interacts with the events that happen in Tears of the Kingdom. It is actually canon according to Nintendo themselves, which is awesome. And there's so many little new layers of depth to that Tears of the Kingdom environment that, listen, if you're tired of the world that Tears of the Kingdom is in, because we've technically been there since Breath of the Wild, it might not do as much for you if you're kind of ready to move on to something else. I personally love this Link and Zelda. I think that the story is so rich on everything that they've created in this Hyrule, and to see the other side of ancient Hyrule and the imprisoning war that we're going through, and kind of just knowing where you're headed as Ganondorf continues to make his advances and whatnot, and you're dealing with Rauru, the King of Hyrule. Like, just the stakes feel like they're at an all-time high. The music is excellent, and Zelda fans, if you care about the lore at all, you're just gonna love this game from a story perspective, guaranteed. I would even say to the point where if you don't enjoy hack and slash games this much, but you really want a great story, you might just kind of get through this anyway, throw it on easy mode, fight your way through everything pretty quickly, and just enjoy the story that it has to offer, because so far for me, that's been a very high point of the game. I then want to next talk about performance overall, and this is also one of the more positive things. In fact, maybe the biggest upgrade if you just enjoyed games like Age of Calamity and Hyrule Warriors on the Nintendo Switch, but you immediately noticed these games don't run that well. Happy to report, just like many other Switch 2 game reviews so far, this thing runs excellent. I mean, legitimately 60 frames per second on playing it on a 4K TV, looks as crisp and vibrant as ever. I am not noticing any kind of hiccups, any kind of frame dips. You have tons of enemies on screen, and it doesn't feel bogged down by the system at all. This feels like the Switch 2 is made for a game like this, and it can handle it just fine. Now, there is 2-player mode in this game, and my understanding is that does go to 30 FPS as opposed to 60. When you're playing this thing single player, the 60 FPS, the smooth combat, the instant response time, it all feels top notch. And that's one of the biggest immediate upgrades you will notice if you remember playing a game like Age of Calamity, and God forbid you played it in split screen mode. Like, there was a lot of lag chugging along and barely the game keeping up to an acceptable frame rate. That is all a thing of the past here, and this game looks great in both handheld and docked mode. That 60 FPS being consistent in single player mode in both of them. Of course, you know, you can notice some minor pop in from characters from time to time. The draw distance isn't maybe as maximized as it always could be, but textures overall, character models, everything looks top notch, and it all runs top notch on Nintendo Switch 2. So I'm generally overall feeling very good about this game, and it's a strong recommendation to Zelda fans that really enjoy the lore and story side of things. However, that said, if you've tested out a warrior style game before and it's just really not up your alley, with just decimating like tons of enemies on screen and kind of the repetitive nature of selecting a mission and going and accomplishing that mission, and it's a rinse and repeat formula that I can definitely see getting repetitive for some. It may get repetitive for me. It hasn't gotten to that point yet, but I can see if you're not drawn in by the story and the characters and what's unfolding in front of you in the world, I can definitely see this not being like a 10 out of 10 game for everybody. And I have my own set of, you know, kind of expectations, kind of bringing it down, that it's probably not going to be a perfect 10 for me by the end of it either. That said, all that goes out the window if you are a Zelda lore nerd, because you're going to want to go through the excellent quality cutscenes and the beautiful music and all of the wonderful voice acting. Like, you're going to want to be here for all of the other side of the events of what happened from Tears of the Kingdom, from Zelda's perspective, of course. So I think that at $70, this is a cool showpiece game of what's possible on Nintendo Switch 2 with the upgraded horsepower. I also think that if you're shopping for somebody as a holiday pickup and you know they're a Zelda fan, this isn't a one-to-one Zelda type of game. It's a very different gameplay experience than that. That said, it scratches a lot of those itches from a story perspective, and it does have some really enjoyable combat and some nice little additions in there, like Flurry Rush being brought over from Tears of the Kingdom. Like, you're gonna get some enjoyment out of it if you're a Zelda fan, even in their combat at all, even though it plays very differently at its core. It's not near as puzzle based and things like that, but I'm really enjoying my time with this game. I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video whether or not you think you're going to buy Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment right at launch, maybe after launch, maybe eventually if we see it go on a sale, or are you somebody who, you know you don't really enjoy Hyrule Warriors games in general and you're not willing to pick up this one? Might you enjoy the story enough to justify the purchase? And now that we have the game out there and playable, if you have picked it up, what are your thoughts and impressions of the game so far? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.